This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. Your host, Harry Wilkinson. Yes, welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. I'm Harry Wilkinson, your host, and Xinyan Kuai Lu to all y'all. Happy Chinese New Year, that's what that means in Mandarin. Chinese New Year just around the corner on Tuesday, the 5th of February. And in China they are celebrating at least a week long, and some celebrate even more. They call it Spring Festival. Even though it's in the winter, it's not a celebration of spring, it's more a looking forward to spring. Kind of in the way that we have our Groundhog's Day, which was yesterday, Saturday. By the way, just so you know, he did not see his shadow, so that means we're going to have an early spring, according to legend. Welcome to the show. We're going to talk more about Chinese New Year. We're also going to continue with our Winter Wellness Edition, so some tips for your wellness resolutions to help you, support you in getting a new you, health-wise at least. So we've been talking about the immune system, ways to boost your immune system and make it healthier. We're going to talk about sugar and its effects, and non-sugar sweeteners, and the new research that has been revealed just recently on how those non-sugar sweeteners may affect you. So we'll talk about that, and we'll continue also talking about our future predictions, which people have been responding to very eagerly. So that seems to be something people want to hear more of, so we'll continue with that. We've been talking about the future of healthcare. So we'll talk about that, and maybe we'll also throw in a little bit about climate change or global warming, because that's a big issue this week. And as you may know, most of the country suffered from much colder than usual temperatures. This was due to a polar vortex, sort of in the middle of the country, so the Midwest in particular got impacted with incredible snowstorms and 25 degree below zero weather. It certainly was Arctic temperatures here where I am in the Mid-Atlantic region, near Washington, D.C. Unusual, to say the least, for this area and this time of year. So it's interesting. We talk about perspective on this show. And this particular story, this particular situation, struck me as far as perspective is concerned, because when I got out this morning and I went outside and it felt warm. You know, it was I said to myself, it's warmer. We finally got through this cold weather. And I looked at the temperature. I found out what the temperature was. It was 23 degrees. 23 degrees. But that's what perspective is all about. Now, 23 degrees, in other circumstances, you would feel cold. But having gone through sub-zero temperatures, 23 degrees feels downright balmy. And it did. It felt warm. So that is what perspective does. And that is what we learn when we go into some of these stories and raise the vibration of them, if you will, out of fear or concern or worry or doubt or whatever other sort of vibes you might have, and raise it up to a level where there's non-judgment, and you can change your perspective on a situation. Look at it as, oh, look what we've created, and look what effect it's having, and look what people are doing about it. You can change your perspective by seeing, I guess a very simple way to put it is the long view of it. But it is taking it out of the endless, seemingly endless cycle of good, bad, negative, positive, oh my gosh, or oh, thank goodness, and bringing it up to, this is what's happening. This is what the experience is bringing. Let's go into it. Recognize the truth that it is not who and what we are, but it is an illusion. And raise the energy. So that's what perspective is. So when temperatures are normally 40 degrees and 50 degrees, 20 degrees feels cold. If that's what you're used to, that's what your expectation is. 40, 50 degree weather, sometimes high 30s. If that's your expectation, then 20s feels downright cold, and you feel upset about it. But if your expectation has now changed to become 10 degrees, 12 degree weather, below zero temperatures, 20 degrees is a blessing, right? I think it was, for me, an interesting lesson that I felt needed to be shared on perspective. So much to talk about on this show, and very little time to get to it all. It is Super Bowl day. I'm not a big football fan, never have been, but Super Bowl has, and many people have talked about this, Super Bowl has taken on a sort of mass ceremony, almost quasi religious ceremony. It has a sacredness to it for a lot of people, which is very interesting. It's very interesting to see how it has also evolved, or some might say devolved, into being a showcase for commercials. Because apparently that's what most people are watching this game for. The halftime show, the big celebratory happenings in the halftime show, and the commercials. The game, not so much, except for the hardcore football fans. I just think it's fascinating that that's what it's become. It's become this. It really has become this cultural phenomena, and cultural values and ideas and thoughts are shared through the halftime show, of course, but I think probably more so through these commercials where people see, and some of them are quite serious. There have been serious commercials in past Super Bowls that have shed light on serious topics. There have been the funny ones that people remember about selling beer or whatever it is. But it's fascinating to me that it's become this community, worldwide community event that rivals anything that we have, and it's not even mostly about football. Very fascinating. I mean, I think you could probably have an event that features a showcase of like a show of performer and dancers and commercials, and that would be it, you know, and that would be fine for lots of people. It would again be sort of a community gathering, a gathering of people connecting and sharing a commonality of humanness, and I think that's really what it's about. Anyway, not to get distracted from what we're actually going to be talking about in this segment. So we're going to get to our winter wellness tips, and we're going to get to more of the future of healthcare. But first I want to talk a little bit about Chinese New Year. Some of you may know that it is the Year of the Pig, according to Chinese astrology. Now this year, the actual date of Chinese New Year is Tuesday, February 5th. It ranges every year between late January and early February. For instance, next year it will be on January the 25th. So this year, the Year of the Pig, begins on February 5th and runs through January 25th, 2020. That entire year is the Year of the Pig. And we'll talk about what the Year of the Pig means in a moment here. But let's talk about the Chinese New Year, or Spring Festival as it is called in China. The Chinese and most Asian countries use a lunar calendar as opposed to the solar calendar that we use here in the West. So this is a lunar New Year. It's based on the cycles of the moon. And it's very interesting if you think about the symbolism behind that, behind the use of a lunar calendar as opposed to a solar calendar. And it's very telling in the cultures, because in Asian culture, which is dominated by a lunar cycle, lunar cycles are connected to feminine energy. And when I say feminine energy, I'm not talking about women. I'm talking about energy that is receptive. Lunar energy, feminine energy, is receptive. Solar energy, the sun, is masculine. Again, I'm not talking about men here. I'm talking about masculine energy, which is a drive to build, create, to take action in a, the term I guess they use today is to be proactive. Whereas the lunar, the feminine, is to be receptive, to take things in, to be subtly influenced, or to have a subtle influence on events, rather than a more sledgehammer type approach. So Chinese culture, Chinese social interactions are very much like that. Asian social interactions are very much like that. There are certain rules, where you don't speak in a certain tone of voice, or you don't say things directly the way that we do here in the States and in Western countries, where you just kind of say what you think. Interactions in Asia are much more subtle than that. They're more sensitive. They take more of a roundabout approach to everything from business dealings to family relations. Family relations, too, are quite different between a solar perspective, if you will, which we have, and the lunar perspective, which Asian cultures have. So in our solar